Welcome to the House by Vegas Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And Chad.
Bob? Bob, is that you?
And Derek will not be able to join us today because I think that he has to wake up at 4 a.m. to start school buses up. Because even when school's off, you have to start the buses up so that they don't screw up and not start when the school is back in.
We tried to wait for him. We delayed it a
Poor
week
guy.
since he got married. And then we delayed it a day because he had to go to a dinner. And then he said, I got to get up in the morning.
Yeah, so
I couldn't record during the day either. I was too busy.
Often delayed 200th episode of the podcast is here. So there was no episode that released on our iTunes feed last week, or the podcast feed of where you're listening to.
Which that's pretty much the only time that's happened. Maybe
It's the second time. The other time was because I had a vacation that fell in a time where we couldn't record before I left. Yeah. So in the 200 episodes, we've only missed 2 weeks.
I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good track record, considering some podcasts will start and run like 10 episodes and then you never hear from them again.
Well, and everybody does tend to have a podcast these days.
Yeah.
But yes.
But not ones that have 200 episodes.
Yeah.
That release weekly, not like doing 2 a day or anything like that.
Yeah, and, the timing, all that stuff, like I said, Derek got married, and there was bad weather, and everybody was sick.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So now we come to you with the 200th episode.
Yeah, we got Chad, made sure they had Chad on. We were going to try to get Corey. He couldn't make it. And Arnie, who also was involved with the site. I mean, he didn't even respond, and I didn't push him because he was on one podcast, and I couldn't be there. It was for Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Wait, which podcast was he on?
The Force Awakens, or was it Force Awakens?
So I think it was a combo episode where we talked about that and Gremlins.
Okay.
Because it was back in December of, what was that, 2015?
Oh, that's right, because he said you put me on the spot.
It's like by asking, it's like, so what'd you think? Like movie review podcasts often involve reviews and thoughts on the movies, but yeah. So on this episode, the movie we'll be discussing when we get to that eventually is House by the Cemetery, because that was part of the inspiration for the namesake of the site and everything.
Named about Corey, who is not here.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute, but first we can kind of go through just things that we've been playing or watching recently, because we're coming out. So, was it January 25th is when Resident Evil 2 came out? So it
Something
came out
like that.
Yeah, like last week. So not that long ago. So I know everybody's been playing that and talking about that. Derek loves the game, and he's already, I think, beat both like the first run and the second run playthroughs.
Because his honeymoon plans got messed up, so he stayed home. They stayed home and
played the game.
So they got messed up the week Resident Evil came out.
Yeah. I have played the first playthrough, so the first run with Leon. So
I just played like 2 hours of it, maybe a little bit more actually at this point.
I haven't even played a single minute of it yet.
Yeah,
I got it downloaded, ready to go, but I've been so busy.
Yeah. I've barely fit in time.
Yeah, because it's, so if you played the original game when it came out back in 1998, it's a graphical overhaul. So it, the locations are the same, and a lot of it, if you go and look, the layout of a lot of things is the same, and but completely updated graphics. It's not just slapping on some updated resolution, and it doesn't have the tank controls with the set camera angles where you walk in a room and the forward button no longer goes forward, but instead it makes you go backwards, and it uses a more modernized, third-person view.
It's like
over the shoulder.
Continue to refine the controls of even 6. Did you play any of 6? Did you guys play any of Resident Evil 6?
No, I didn't.
So that's broken up in different chapters. Like I think you might be able to choose who you can play as, or what chapter to play as, but you only get so far, and then you've got to play as somebody else, I believe. Not a good game, but Leon's part, I think, is very good. Like, he starts out, he's in Raccoon City, and I think you go to, like, the mayor's office or whatever, and it's got, like, some great lighting, and, the controls are pretty good. It's not as refined as this, but it is a further continuation of, like, 4, and then 5, and then 6. It feels a lot more fluid. And actually, if I remember correctly, I feel like that one you can even go over stuff like desk and everything, which is like, actually, I feel like you might be more mobile in that actually than you are in this. But they are trying to make this more of a remake. So it is like a continuation of that, even though this is built on the same engine that was made with RE7.
Yes.
But yeah, it looks incredible.
Yeah, it looks
and it plays
great.
really well. It is Resident Evil 2. Like if you've played that a lot,
Yeah.
if you've ran that game into the ground, like I did when I was younger, and then I've played it probably like every couple years, I at least play like the first 45 minutes of that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some of it's very familiar, but minor spoilers, the Kendo gun shop. Is that in the opening area, or did I pass it up?
It is later in the game, or at least on the Leon playthrough.
Okay, yeah. See, the gun shop or whatever in the beginning of Resident Evil 2. So I started running through, and then I was like kind of plowing through the beginning. I thought, oh, I'm just going to go try to see if I can find Brad Vickers there under the stairs, But there was no stairs for me to go under. That was the only part when I was
the stairs in the original game were only available in the second run playthroughs.
Oh, was
the B
it?
Scenario.
Was that what it? Okay,
Yes.
okay. So maybe I was just used to doing it then.
Yeah, so I think...
Well, the gates are there too, so I'm sure, I guess those will probably open.
Yeah, I think you can go in the area in the B scenario. I haven't played it yet, but, it has a lot of the familiar beats if you love the, original game back when it came out. But it is updated enough, because if you just had it be a, updated graphics on the same, like, fixed camera angles and all that stuff, it would not play very well for a modern audience. So I think it's renovated enough that even people that don't have a nostalgia for it can pick it up and enjoy it.
For sure.
It does have the nature of go find X item to put in this thing, and but there is a lot of it that are puzzles. And if you are impatient and don't care about a sense of achievement, you can just go online and find out how to do it. So that's there's a few of them where it's like, I really don't want to backtrack to find this combination for the safe, so I'm just going to look it up.
Well, back then you didn't have Google, so you had to use your strategy.
Yeah. I had an RE2 guide. Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
magazines.
But I was pretty, back then I pretty much only read those once I had completed the game once. And then I would like rip open the game,
Well, see, the thing that I do, like, because at this point I have relatively limited time often to play games and stuff, so I just like to collect every single item that I can while I'm playing it. So I will look stuff up as I'm playing, because I don't want to have to go back and play it 4 times. Like, I love the first playthrough, and I think it is a game you really, to accomplish everything you need to see, you need to play it twice, like with one character then the other character. I don't think there's as much interplay between the scenarios as there was in the original PlayStation version with the zapping system.
Yeah, they said there's no zapping system.
Because
so
if you weren't aware what that means, is in the original game, if you played through initially as one character and you took a certain item from a room, that meant that when you played it the second time from the other character's perspective, that thing was then gone. So you could change how the game played out depending on what you took in one scenario or the other.
And then what you left in the chest too, right?
Yeah, and then in the original game, it seemed like the paths crossed quite a few times between Claire and Leon, like the protagonist. In the new one, they don't. They do a few times, but it's not as interconnected. But at the same time, like in the original game, Leon and Claire would like meet each other and like, okay, I'm going to go to the other side of the building, take this walkie-talkie, and we'll talk in an hour. Like, in real life, it makes no sense to split up like that. So I think they did streamline a lot of continuity stuff to kind of fix it for a modern scenario. Like, Leon doesn't have his police uniform on when the game first starts, because if he hadn't come into town yet, how would he have it? So there's some things that it just kind of smooths out in terms of realism and things like that.
Yeah. Still definitely Resident Evil. Again, it plays really well, but it is that, go find this key, put it in the door, and then like you're zigzagging across the police station. It's good. It's really good.
That's what I loved about the game, was being able to find the clues and going through the different rooms and stuff. And in the game, I used to read all the emails, all the messages, because I was trying to get a broader picture of what was going on.
I think that's what I really liked about the first one, is all the world building through the documents and stuff. That's what kind of hooked me on the franchise. Like, wasn't just some of it was the puzzle solving stuff on that first one, and of course the zombies, but then like just the world building, and you read the diaries about somebody turning into a zombie and stuff. That was the really, really good stuff. And this one, like, just the visuals and some of the cinematics and stuff are incredible. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the new game. I hope we've been kind of talking through Messenger. I hope they do something different, only because they've nailed this. That's what they should have done for a remake. But I'm very curious to see them like kind of blow out the game design and kind of reinvent the franchise again. Now that they've got like
Well, they gave the nostalgia blast.
Yeah.
And if they go back to that well again, because in this game too, something that's a little bit different. So in the original series, the original games, there was like the Tyrant or Mr. X or what you call him that shows up in the game. And he only showed up in the original series in the B scenario. So when you played it for the second time from the other, yeah. Well,
that was different, I think. Than
the Nemesis was in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and then a similar type character was in Resident Evil 2 that was called the Tyrant or Mr. X in some of the later games or novelization stuff. Same kind of, I think, same concept. A big, powerful character that you can't kill that comes after you. But in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, he actually used weapons and said said stars. And the Tyrant or Mr. X did not talk and did not use weapons. But similar, function that just a big character that shows up. But in Resident Evil 3, it showed up way more often because that was kind of the entire concept of the game. But in Resident Evil 2, the new one, so after that, after the Mr. X or Tyrant shows up, he will then be there for most of the game. And sometimes it's very thrilling and fun because when he gets closer, you can hear like his footsteps and you can hear him get louder as he approaches. And then you can be sitting there like, crap, is he going to find me? And then that, this room full of zombies, it's not a big deal just to run through and get around it. Then becomes a huge problem when he's involved. Because then them just making noises and lunging at you draws him to you. So it just creates a very fun dynamic. But then it also becomes incredibly frustrating when you're trying to just go and finish one of the puzzles and move something in a room that makes noise.
Yeah.
And you have to run through the freaking police station 6 times to do it. But, yeah, like that mechanic is fun and remind me of like Alien Isolation where the alien comes through.
The Resident Evil 7, there's a somewhat element to that. Not the same, but there are people...
Persistent characters that come through.
And they are like, you are like hiding around corners, and that being first person, like you are walking very slowly and you can't use the camera to look around a corner.
Yeah.
You hear something and then you kind of like peek around the corner and then you see them there, and hope that they're not facing you whenever they turn around. Like it's done very well in that game as well. Resident Evil 7, it definitely is that classic style. Because you haven't played that, have you, Chad? 7?
No, I haven't played 7. No.
It definitely is still the classic style of find keys and stuff. But I think it just feels a little bit more organic. Like it still feels like a gamey thing.
Yeah.
But it's set in like this old farmhouse, like basically like a Texas Chainsaw. And so the conceit makes a little bit more sense that these people have like these crazy traps and stuff like that. And there's different, I guess, houses on the property and everything. So I think it works really well in 7, and it feels familiar enough, but it also doesn't, this is seemingly exactly the same stuff.
So
stuff might be moved around, but
7, the latest one, the last one.
Yeah, the latest story-wise.
Okay.
Yeah. That one's very, very good.
And I have it sitting downstairs. I haven't played it yet.
I'm bringing you my VR. Like I said, you've got to, because once you've played a Resident Evil game one time, then the second playthrough is not nearly as scary, unless it is like a scenario B or something. But like the whole, I think that's what's so good about the games is they've always been very good about rewarding multiple playthroughs, and it becomes a new game every time you play it, because all of a sudden you know where the stuff is, or like how to handle the situation. So then you're like juking zombies and stuff, and you're worried about getting a speed run or something like that. So 7, it's got some amazing moments, especially in the opening of that game, like the first hour or so. And then if you see it once, again, if you're used to like getting around somebody stalking you, it's not nearly as scary the second time. So at least experience that first part in VR, because it is like one of my favorite experiences ever.
Yeah, so I know there's been news they're going to do like a Resident Evil series that's been discussed on Netflix maybe. It's from the same production company as the movies that came out, so hopefully it's not... But after Resident Evil 2, I really think they can make a killer series or movie out of that's truer to what the games did in like 1 and 2 at least, and not be this kind of post-apocalyptic person flipping in the air and kind of heavy post-apocalyptic action movies. They could make it a more grounded, horror film.
Well, didn't they have? I remember reading in one of the magazines that I picked up, because I was looking forward to the original Resident Evil when it came out.
The movie or the game?
The movie, yeah. But I remember they talked about the original concept or something had to be scrapped, and they had to bring in someone new, and they had to change the storyline or something because there was some type of conflict. Because I know originally they were supposed to release it like a couple years earlier than what the actual first movie was released.
Yeah, Romero was on it.
Yeah, George Romero.
Something happened. I
Yeah.
can't remember the details, but
he had directed some of the commercial, a Japanese commercial for Resident Evil 2, and then he had written a draft of a script for like a Resident Evil movie that was, I think, more strongly or a lot more based on the first game, but it just wasn't what they wanted. And I think also part of it may have been a money thing, because I think the idea that Paul W.S. Anderson pitched for Resident Evil, being confined to an underground catacomb and stuff, was a little bit more budget friendly than having a more sprawling thing that had a big mansion and had outdoor scenes and stuff in a city. I think it was a little bit cheaper to make it the way that they did. Then I've contended that Aliens vs. Predator is the same movie as Resident Evil because it's underground catacomb and one of the characters even dies, and the same actor, the leader of the SWAT team in Resident Evil, is also one of the people in Aliens vs. Predator. The guy that gets sliced into a million pieces by the lasers also gets caught in the Predator's net. In
as much as everybody wanted that first movie to be more faithful, from a producing standpoint, if they're worried about making money, they didn't make the wrong decision considering how long that franchise went. And yeah, they weren't. It's like Marvel.
Yeah, I mean,
money,
the thing is,
but
like,
they made money every single time.
Those movies weren't for me, but they were for some audience because I think globally they did make good money. I just wish that if they were to do one again, pare it down a little bit, make it a little bit more grounded, a little bit more about a scary atmosphere. And I think Resident Evil 2 shows you can have some of those classic story elements and it actually not be super corny. Because part of it is you just get better voice acting that's a little bit more modern. Not that like those original games had their charm and they were awesome at the time, but they don't necessarily translate to a super cinematic experience now. Because where games have gone since 1998 with cinematics and voice acting and writing and everything. But yeah, so I'm super excited to see if they do a series with it that stays more true to that. And I don't want to spoil anything, but like the game Resident Evil 2 does acknowledge the movies in some ways and kind of one-ups it and streamlines all that. So I was very happy with that.
That's cool.
Yeah, but that's pretty much all I had time to do. I did watch some old X-Files episodes. Mainly because one of our old X-Files videos started getting a lot of views for some reason for like 3 days. And I was like, I should rewatch some of those episodes. So I watched a bunch of those with Julie, but...
And you guys both watched that show?
Yes, Hellier.
Yes,
Hellier. What's it about?
Hellier, or as the locals call it, Hellier.
Hellier?
Yeah, it's a docuseries on YouTube. It's produced by Greg Newkirk and Dana Matthews. They're from Planet Weird. We actually ran into them at Crypticon, and they're paranormal investigators out of Cincinnati. So they did a docuseries on this small town. I think it's southeastern Kentucky, a town called Hellier, and there's been reports of or sightings of goblin-like creatures,
goblins,
that come out of the caves. So they go down there and they investigate and talk with some of the locals and try to get more information and stuff. So that's on YouTube right now. I do recommend it. I watched all 5 episodes. It looks like there's going to be a season 2. It's definitely worth checking out. It is free. You can go on YouTube and watch it.
Yeah, because I watched that as well. And in terms of the production value for a suit, so it's got the setup that a lot of docuseries do, where the first episode's kind of laying out, here's what all the background is. And then after that, it really goes into the investigation. And production value wise, I think it's on par with stuff that's been on Netflix and, Hulu and like big series that have money behind them. So it's very well shot. And it's, done. It's not a seat of your pants, kind of really crappy, hard to watch, where you can make a bunch of, allowances for technical stuff. So all that's super well done. Because I think some people involved with it had done different shows before with like the Stanley Hotel that The Shining was based on and stuff.
Yeah.
So people who were doing it actually had like technical know-how. So even though it's on YouTube, I think that's because they just decided to go independent with the production and not do it through some channel. Because I think it's going to be on Amazon Prime at some point. I think they're still working through that. It could be that on Amazon Prime, any video that you submit for their service has to have transcriptions. So you have to have like a subtitle file for everything you do, and I think that's really the only hoop you have to jump through, as long as you don't have like full frontal nudity or graphic pornography or something.
I think it's the context too of the nudity.
If it's an educational series,
a lot of indie stuff, and people have been getting very upset. Understandably so, because if they put that in their pipeline as far as revenue and everything, like, hey, we're gonna make this film, it's just gonna go there. It's gonna be ad supported.
Well, because the thing that sucks on that is if our shorts got taken down, it would be the end of the world. But the thing I've seen is people watch our shorts and then think that they're a budgeted Amazon production. It's like, oh, this sucks 1 out of 10. It's like, well, this is made for $40. Like, so I think they do have a perception problem where Netflix has, some pretty low quality stuff on there, but on average, it's all like relatively higher budgeted, decent production value things that have some level of vetting as to what's in it. As opposed to Amazon had stuff that looked like somebody shot it on a high-8 camcorder in their backyard in the 90s with full frontal nudity and a bunch of rape. So I do get them wanting to protect their brand to some extent. And since it was just an open program where anybody could submit their work, a lot of stuff ended up on there that would not have passed if they had curators that were looking at the content. Because if you're not part of a big studio to get on Netflix, you have to pay them like $1,500 to even look at it. And there's no guarantee they'll do anything beyond look at it. And then if they did make you an offer on the low independent scale like that, they might just simply offer you less than you paid them to look at it, to run it exclusively for like 5 years or something. So Amazon was like a lifeline for indies, but at the same time, they do need to protect their brand and not have people think that it's associated with terrible, terrible movies where they would, the auto suggest feature would give them something that's terrible. But I think that Hellier was going to be on Amazon Prime soon too, which is an easier way to watch it for some people than YouTube. But I can just watch it on my TV. It was.
I mean, you had mixed feelings about it, but I think you have to keep it's more of a thought experiment. These guys go in and their intent is try to figure out what this thing is, these stories that surround this town, and they go into the town and really they just take a leap of faith and based off of an email they received from an anonymous source. But I won't get into this, to the details or the spoilers or anything. But I think it's definitely worth the watch. I mean, it's right now season 1 is 5 episodes. And,
how long are they?
They're about, I want to say 40 minutes to an hour per episode.
Yeah, I mean they're around the standard length for those types of series, so it's not they're not like 10 minutes or something. It's more full length.
So if you're into like paranormal stuff, if you're into like ufology, if you're into cryptozoology, stuff like that, and this surrounds an actual urban legend around the Kentucky Goblin. So I mean, there's various reports of this thing being seen. That kind of ties into the whole Mammoth Cave system that, these caves go really deep down into the ground and they're, so they go, there's parts in the season and the episodes where they go into the caves and they try to communicate with, whatever they have at the moment. They use, ghost box and spirit boxes and stuff like that. So yeah, there are aspects where, like you said, William, that you didn't really find appealing in a way, because it kind of, I can see where you come off where they divert from the actual investigation and looking into what this thing is versus getting more into switching into a paranormal type investigation.
Because the first episodes out of the entire series, I'd seen this comment on, I think, Bloody Discussing's article about it when they had said something about it. A few of the comments on like either their site or Facebook on the post had come to the, episode 1 is so a lot of paranormal stuff is kind of like two-tiered. Is it general interest? So kind of a lot of those kind of ghost hunter travel log shows where they have somebody telling a story and they reenact it, and that's kind of it. So there's like those types of shows, and then there's the more the stuff where you kind of have to take a. So I'm somebody that's very skeptical about all that stuff. So I always like to see like, oh, where's actual proof? But like whenever there's somebody that's like in a room, it's like, oh, I've got a feeling I can, and then they're talking to spirits and all this stuff and tarot card readings and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm checked out. I don't. So like I would say with Hellier, like it starts out talking about stuff that's very interesting. So episode 1 is like, oh man, this is amazing. And then as it went further along, you got a little bit more out there in terms of how open you or how skeptical you are. The more skeptical you are, the less those later episodes are going to appeal to you. Because I think that they did it independent because they didn't want to have to, work with a TV channel or a bigger crew that would make them shift the narrative to be probably more about goblins and have reenactment videos and have it more like that, and make them kind of trim out all this stuff that's, talking about, synchronicities, like the fact there's all these coincidences of things mean something. And but that's just a lot of supernatural stuff. If you're not, it's something where if somebody wasn't into any of that stuff whatsoever, I'm not sure that I would recommend that series to them. But if they have interest in those types of things, then it's something to be right up their alley.
So what is this second season going to focus on? You guys know? Did they say, is it still going to be on Hellier? Is it, is that what the series is called, or is it other?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, well, I don't want to, at the last episode of the season, you get kind of a clue that, looks like they're getting more information. So maybe this is sort of like the, Fox Mulder thing where he gets led down a rabbit hole that he can't seem to figure out, and he keeps getting misled in different directions. But I just want to give a shout out because if you are interested in, you want a more detailed review of it, some friends of mine from Cruising with Steak podcast, they're actually discussing it tonight on their podcast, and they're going to have various guests on there discussing it. So if you want a more in-depth analysis and thought-provoking type theories about it, you can tune into their podcast. They're on cruisingwithsteak.com. So it's cruising, CRUZIN with steak.com. And they're going to be talking more about the actual legend itself, the Kentucky Goblin, because we went to Crypticon. They had different panel speakers that actually talked about this thing. I think it was called like Shotguns and Goblins. So the guy talks
that
about
sounds like a good movie.
Yeah, it does actually. It's a good title.
Yeah, because the Hopkins Little Goblin thing, that was the inspiration for like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Gremlins and all kinds of pop culture stuff, kind of indirectly. So it's like a huge piece of pop culture that everybody has been touched by, even if they don't know it.
Touched by a goblin.
Yeah, so you can check it out there. Otherwise, if I definitely recommend checking it out. If you get into like the first 2 episodes and you just from that point on, if you don't like it, then it's not for you. But I mean, it's free and it's very well produced. It's very well edited. So at least you have that.
Yeah, I would say like the first episode is general interest. I think most people will enjoy it. The second episode will kind of give you a flavor of whether or not you want to continue on. So,
do you guys remember when there was a Bigfoot sighting in Fairdale?
It was like a trash bag.
Yeah, it ended up being a trash bag. Do you remember that? You weren't
in
here at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was in the past 10 years. But I don't remember when it was.
Twitter existed because somebody made a Fairdale Bigfoot Twitter account.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to them a lot. But yeah, somebody like got a picture with their camera and they, there was like multiple people. Like it was in the Courier Journal and stuff, I think. And then like come to find out, somebody discovered it was a trash bag the whole time. Yeah,
it was a trash bag that just happened to have been structured in like on.
But it was like it got some buzz.
If you just looked at the picture, you could have been like, oh, I can kind of see that could be a creature, but it was just the way.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm so skeptical of supernatural paranormal stuff.
You've been burned by one too many Fairdale Bigfoots.
Well, no, it's just like when I experienced sleep paralysis. I was younger, and I was like, oh, this is really scary. But then I looked online on the internet and just typed in what I experienced. And found like, oh, this is a medical thing. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But a lot of people hear that and like, well, I understand that, your brain does this, but I still think a ghost visited me and touched me. So it's like, well, if that's what you think.
You don't know who.
So it's just like how much suspension of disbelief. And two, after playing Resident Evil, it's like, I want like there to be some like small town with crazy stuff that's really going on. You can go down and see. But that doesn't happen or exist because zombies and monsters aren't real. But or are they?
All I know is that I really hope that they continue down this good streak of Resident Evil as far as like, they seem like they're on the right path now.
They have their finger on the pulse of what people want.
I don't know if it'll continue with the movie and TV line like they are relaunching the movies now, but they're getting a Monster Hunter film and stuff too. So, but people have been complaining about that already, the look of that, and kind of the concept. So I don't know, but I think it would be very cool if they could kind of surprise a lot of people with and make like a really good zombie series, you know.
Yeah.
But also to like,
Better than Walking Dead?
hey, you know what I mean? Yeah, Walking Dead's been on for like what, a decade now or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, Resident Evil has its fans for sure. And I mean, it's just incredible, like the popularity of that series and how they've been able to keep it going, you know, through the good and bad stuff.
Well, I mean,
like,
because those games predate the revival of the zombie movie
by a
genre.
lot.
So I think without those games, you might not have the movies. Like 20 Days Later, which even though it wasn't zombies, it was infected, but Dawn of the Dead remake. So I think that those games kind of kept the zombie stuff in the pop culture. And a lot of those games are very much based on the George Romero movies and the like Fulci zombie and stuff like that. So they were based on the old school zombie stuff. The games were influenced, not the more recent stuff. Now that's fed into the games and the movies and all that stuff over time as culture has shifted. But yeah, so Sean,
I'm just surprised that they course corrected so much with the game series. You know what I mean? After
I think they listened
the
to
path they were
fans
going on,
because they realized
after
like just
6.
doing action adventure stuff wasn't what people wanted out of that series.
You know, I was fine with 5. I loved playing co-op in 5. I'm okay if it's a good game. You know,
Yeah.
like they just made not a good game in 6. And
I mean, they've made some stinkers over the years.
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
had like the first person one that wasn't very good, and
yeah, the offshoots, and I don't even think, you know, but to make a mainline Resident Evil game that was just such a misfire, you really didn't expect them to pull it back around with 7, and then back to back with RE2, which it's not even like they made a follow up in the same style. You know,
Yeah,
2 years later, like, you know, the traditional model of
it's
Resident
a modern
Evil.
day remake of a 20-year-old game.
Yeah, that plays totally different than the last one they put out, even though it is similar to you know, all the other ones as far as gameplay wise as 6 and 5. But yeah,
Well, I mean, if they make a series on Netflix, I'll definitely watch it.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I would, because what was it after me and Derek after the Haunting of Hill House? Like he was excited for them to do a Resident Evil series that took place in a mansion, or at least a season of one that took
Yeah.
place in the mansion because of the way Haunting of Hill House did. And two, if you think about like production budget wise, making your set a huge mansion is cheaper than shooting a bunch of practical locations.
yeah.
So just get a cool exterior location at some like mansion that's out in the middle of nowhere, and then just build your own set and bada bing, bada boom. And then if fan interest builds, then you build out a larger second season that has like the city
the police
involved.
station.
The police station. I mean, it's pretty easy blueprint to follow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so did you get a chance to watch anything?
I've just been watching occasional TV shows here and there. Good Place. I've been telling you guys
Yeah.
about that. I'm like halfway through the latest season, which is over now. But other than that, no, I've like barely had half hour here and there to watch that, Nicole and I. But I don't think I've watched anything else. I did get in my copy of All the Colors of the Dark finally, and then All the Colors of Giallo, which is a documentary, and then got in that copy of Suspiria today,
Suspiria.
which I saw last year and loved. And then First Man also. Have not had time to watch anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to... It's a rush period right now for work for me. When I go home here, I've got to get a revision done. Start on a revision and get it done by morning. You know? So, yeah, their CEO or whoever.
Play some Resident Evil tonight.
I wish I could. I want to. I played it for like just a little bit today when my daughter was asleep, and that was it. That was my getting back to playing. And I was like, what am I doing now? You
Yeah.
know? Thankfully, it's kind of somewhat straightforward. Yeah, you zigzag a lot. But yeah, that was pretty much it for me.
All right, so before we get into discussing House by the Cemetery, we can discuss, and this is the 200th episode, so I forgot to mention at the beginning, there's new music now, so the podcast has new music, because we decided that we needed to freshen that up after a while.
200 episodes later.
Yeah,
Corey made the original.
yes, he made that back before the first episode, so back in 2015, and we'd used that for 200 episodes. We've been talking about refreshing it forever and just never did it. And then somebody followed me or our account on Instagram, and in their bio it said they did music. So I listened to some of their stuff because it said they take quotes for like podcast intros and stuff. Like, oh, okay. So I listened to some music and I liked it and I thought it fit with what we do. So I reached out and had commissioned them to make a podcast theme for us. That
Do you remember what their name is?
it was White Bat Audio.
Okay, cool.
So
So thank you for that.
yes, I can verify that because I followed them on Instagram is how I came across that, which is funny how all that works now. Yeah, it's White Bat Audio on Instagram was who did the music. And we told them that like in terms of like influences, we Assault on Precinct 13, the John Carpenter score for that. Because we don't always do horror stuff. So, like, well, something kind of John Carpenter-ish, but it's not, like, trying to sound spooky was the direction. So that's the new music. And we might, over time, like, update that more frequently and go through different themes. It depends on how it plays out. But yeah, so there's new music. But, so this is the 200th episode. The site launched in, was it August 1st, 2014? So in August 1st of 2019, it'll be 5 years. Which is kind of crazy to think that it's been that long because it didn't seem like all that long ago that it started.
No.
And then our podcast started probably like a year and a half after that?
Started early 2015.
Okay, early 2015.
Because it started before It Follows came out.
And House by the Video Store wasn't necessarily, it was one of many names that we were trying to debate on what we're going to call it.
Oh, do you have a list of the old names?
Yeah, I found this old list of notes that we were going through. So some of the names we were considering.
And Corey probably thought up pretty much all
he
these.
pretty much did a lot of these.
He always has names for stuff, like in his back. Oh, I've got a name for this I want to do one day.
LittleHouseOfHorror.com, Video Holocaust.
That aged poorly.
Stay away from that
I'm
one.
glad we didn't pick that one.
We probably told you no when he said it anyway.
28 Films Later, Terror on the TV, and
That's not a terrible one.
House of 1,000 Movies. And then we ultimately went with House by the Video Store.
Yeah.
Because it evokes an image mentally.
Yeah.
Because you think of like, the house by the scary video store.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, House by the Cemetery was an influence on that, obviously. So Corey, Arnie, you told Arnie that you guys run a web hosting service together. And you told Arnie you wanted to start like a horror website, basically, right?
Yeah. So originally, me and Aaron, we've been friends since high school.
He's done the design stuff on the site.
Yeah. He does all the design work. But him and I were friends since high school. So we got into, back in the day, Counter-Strike. And we had a server that was called the Undead Clan. So we eventually branched off and created a site called the Undead Network, which is just like a bunch of gaming servers put together. So I told him, I said, well, we have this domain. I'd like to create a website where I can do written reviews on some of the lesser known zombie films and kind of just like get it out there. I never really wrote anything before, like any type of articles, but I wanted to get it started. And, that's when he brought up, hey, I got a friend who's into all that stuff. And that's how Corey reached out to me and we started talking. And then ultimately I brought you on board because you were more the video guy. And then that's when we decided, hey, let's do video reviews instead of doing actually written reviews, which we actually, when we first started, we did both, a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of evolved from that into more just video stuff.
And the plan originally, like no podcast, it was one video a week, and it was going to alternate between a video review, which is like a highly produced, not like even like the ones we do now, which now we try to do like discussion. We're not just saying, hey, we're just going to get on it. Like we try to do it because, I don't know, just to spark interesting discussion, or at least with each other.
Because the old format was to shoot stuff in front of a green screen, splice in clips from the movie, do some little skit type stuff to go with it. And that got to be pretty time consuming very quickly.
Well, yeah, it was alternate between a video review that was pretty intensive and then a top 5.
Yeah.
And every Friday we were going to release one video. And I think I started putting one together or maybe something. And then, because I think Corey, he said something. He said, I told him I don't want to do it unless Sean does it with me because he wants to do the videos. He wants to do video stuff. And then like I started doing one and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I got to get William involved to do some of the video stuff because I'll get burned out within like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, because there was times we'd alternate out like the list and different reviews and stuff.
Yeah.
And
so Corey was basically going to host it all. And then William was going to William said he was up for doing some stuff on camera too when he started. I was basically going to be all behind the camera, behind the scenes.
And I think our very first one was Spookies, right?
yeah, Spookies. I'm trying to remember. So there were
Spookies, a
Phantasm,
The Gate.
The Gate. Were those? I'm trying to remember what the other ones were.
Was that it?
The Burning.
Oh yeah, The Burning.
Um,
And then we did a handful of top 5s too. I think he did like some top 5s back to back. And then in the middle of that was top 5s. And I think he got burnt out. And then he, I don't know. I think he just started
got
bored of it. Maybe.
I think got burnt out, and it's also a lot of work because when we were on the schedule trying to do a video per week, and we shifted the release dates from Friday to Monday just because all the search engine, the SEO stuff says release content on Monday, so you have the entire week to gain steam because it's counterintuitive to think because nobody or less people are at work on the weekends, but when they're not at work and they're with their families, they're not checking the internet that much. So if you put articles out at the end of the week, sometimes that can really kill the momentum going because people just don't check stuff on Saturdays and Sundays as often. So we changed the schedule around a little bit. And then we did the one video a week for a while, but sometimes
well, and then I eventually, you did some video reviews of it, and then I eventually started doing some too because he he had his work issues and work stuff going on, and then he couldn't make it for this or that, and we really didn't want to like miss the schedule. Even just like with the podcast, we've only missed 2 in the past 200 episodes. We really, whatever happened, we wanted to hit at least a video a week or so.
Yeah.
And it did start tapering here and there, or at least we would release some sort of content. So then I started doing some video reviews. I really wasn't on screen, but it would be voiceover and, highly edited. And that's what I did, Volumes of Blood. I don't know if he reached out to me or what. I'm assuming he did.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think he may have just messaged me because I don't think I would have messaged. Maybe I did.
Or maybe you did because Thomas Milner was in it.
Yeah, because I talked to him about doing a set visit. And I said, hey, can I come down there and shoot some video? I talked to Nathan about it. And he was kind of like, it might be really busy. I don't, he didn't know me very well. And I don't think he wanted somebody over his shoulder while he was trying to direct. And so then he's like, you might just ask PJ or whatever. And then he ended up sending us a copy review. We did a video review of that and enjoyed it. And then eventually got offered to direct a segment. So that led to that, which was great. But yeah,
but also there was also a factor that you guys wrote and direct the 48-hour short.
Yeah. Which you couldn't be here for. You were in Colorado at the time, unfortunately.
But you guys won Best Film, Best Audience Award.
That was what? Was that 2015?
Yes, that was October 2015.
Yeah.
Because we did that. And so, because once we had started doing some of those video reviews or top 5s or whatever, I know there was times when we were doing some of the opening scenes with Corey, like shooting the like little skit type stuff. Like, man, we really just need to do like a short film or something. And then I think, to kind of put a fire under us, sign up for the 48 because we had to make something for it. And then we got that put together. And I think up until...
And the content did take a break then, I think, because we were like...
Once we got into... Once we had the podcast going and short films, and copyright stuff we ran into.
Yeah. Yeah, where stuff would get pulled or whatever, and you're just like, man,
because there was
we're putting all this work into it, and it's getting pulled from YouTube or something.
You guys were making soundtrack swaps that were gaining a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
And that the first one I made is not even anywhere to be watched right now, I don't think,
because it got pulled from YouTube initially, so you put it on Vimeo, and then it was on Vimeo and like Bloody Disgusting and the AV Club and all kinds of sites shared it. And it had, like, I think in terms of impressions or partial views, or people like 100,000 or hundreds
which
of thousands.
Is pretty good for a Vimeo video.
Yeah.
Because it's not organically searched.
But then once we stopped paying the monthly fee for our Vimeo Pro account, now you can't watch it there. I think we posted it directly to Facebook.
Okay. Yeah.
But we need to go back and see if it gets flagged on YouTube.
That was It Follows and the Psycho soundtrack, right?
Yeah. And then
we can always upload it to our site directly, too.
Then I did one that was the guest in Halloween, the original 1978 John Carpenter one. And then you did
Halloween 3.
You did Halloween 3 and Trick or Treat.
Yeah.
I think House of the Devil and Rosemary's Baby.
I believe so, maybe.
And then I did one that was not really a soundtrack swap of 2 movies, but it took John Carpenter's The Thing and swapped out the music that Morricone had done with his music from his album Lost Themes. And that one's out and still up. Yeah, like I remember too, like over the course of the site our YouTube channel was deleted once.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that.
Because I was checking the app, I was like, why aren't the stats pulling up? So then I looked and it was gone. And then I went and looked our email account up.
The site, because that's our whole website.
Yeah, so that was like a major thing, and I looked up our email, and we got an email from YouTube. It's like, your account's been terminated for violation of community standards and services. And I was like, well, you have to get 3 copyright strikes to lose your account. And at that time we had 0. I'm like, I'm not sure what this is due to. So I emailed their customer support, and they actually did review it and reversed it. So I have no clue what happened. I think there was at the time somebody that really had a vendetta against, I think, Corey.
Yeah,
and because they commented a bunch of videos, and I think they submitted our content for like harassment or abuse or something, because that's what violation of the community services are, like, you know, hate speech, threats of violence, things like that.
Wasn't that person's name Judy?
Yeah,
it was. Judy, wasn't it?
I mean, that could have been completely unrelated. Just I know it happened in the same span of time.
Yeah, the person trashing was definitely something Judy.
But that wasn't the first time we've had stuff taken down. We had our entire site, our server crash.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because there's the big traffic thing is the Comic-Con when they revealed the trailer for Ash vs. Evil Dead. I think it was Sean. You had written up like a temporary post
because they announced. They said, "Hey, we're going to show the trailer."
They said they're going to show it.
Okay, well, they're probably going to release it online right away. Or they might. They do
so you had made a post on the site that had all the information and a thumbnail and everything, and all I had to do was just drop in the YouTube link when it was up. So the second that the trailer hit YouTube, I embedded it in the link, hit publish, and then tweeted the link out. And then Bruce Campbell retweeted it, or whoever was managing his account retweeted it. And since it was right after Comic-Con, people thought we had the exclusives on the trailer.
Yeah.
So our site was being bombarded with like hundreds of thousands of views, and our server wasn't set up for that.
And you had been drinking a little bit, and you handled the back end, right?
So I was 6 beers in, and they're like, "Hey, our site is down." I'm like, "What?" And then I looked at the traffic and the back end stuff. And it was like 70,000 hits in like a minute or two. And I'm like, "What the hell?" I was like, "What's going on? Are we getting attacked?"
Yeah.
They're like, no, he released that tweet. And I'm like, "Holy crap!" So I'm trying to figure this stuff out. I'm like, all right, let me get in there. I had to get in there. I had to reboot a whole new server and switch the IP temporarily just so the traffic would die down. Because as soon as I brought it back up, the traffic just kept pinging. And I increased like all the hardware. I put more CPU power behind it, RAM and stuff, and that still wasn't enough. So really just had to wait till that traffic died down a little bit before it actually came back up.
We had some people cussing us too, but I mean, we never expected in a million years that would happen. We just thought, we might get like, if we're lucky, we'll get like 200, site hits. Maybe something will happen.
We should have linked to YouTube. We should have did like a YouTube video or something and linked it there.
Well, the way that, because I'm trying to remember back at that time, like our site views, I haven't really looked at them too much recently because it's more what our social media impressions and YouTube videos and stuff like that.
We don't push a lot to the site, but it's still important.
But the amount of traffic we were getting per minute was, significantly more than we were getting per month prior to that.
Yeah.
Because some of the articles, like I had written a few editorial articles that got a little bit of traction because I just went out and shared them a bunch of places, but that post got so much, like the site was just slammed. And there were a lot of people that weren't that mad. They're like, who is House Buff Video Store? Why do they have the exclusive? And why is their site crashing under the traffic? And it's like, we did not think that
I remember
official...
where I was at too, whenever that went up.
Yeah, I was sitting at home.
you had sent it to, I don't know if you had sent it in Messenger or something, and you're like, oh, it's up, or Twitter or something. But I was like near where Louisville Motor Speedway used to be, like the landfill basically. Some guy was in a car. I was working for the news, and I think I was by myself. I had to go shoot an accident. Some guy was in his car, or he was working or something, and essentially a pole went through him.
Oh.
He went through a fence, and he was alive, and they pulled him out, and he still had the pole, and I saw him put him on the stretcher with this big pole sticking out. So, like, the station's asking me what's going on, and then you're messaging, and I'm, like, more worried about the Bruce Campbell tweet. So then I, like, got video, and then I pulled over to the side of the road, and I'm, like, tweeting to you guys, like, okay, this is down.
Yeah, because I remember...
I'm like, I'll be there in a minute. I just told my station I was on my way.
I remember that I hit publish on the article, and then I tweeted it out. And then, so like on our site, there was like a stats dashboard, and I remember seeing it go like so it's just like, this is not, if you're not listening, or if you're not watching via the video, you can't see this, but it's like this bar that's really close to the bottom. It's just a little bit, and then it spikes directly straight up for like hours.
That was exciting. That was fun. I mean, our site stuff, we have slowed down because we don't do basically any other content. Well, we do the podcast because it's hard to even get together for this. But I do want to, every now and then I think I want to write some more for the site.
Yeah.
But
yeah, me too.
It's another weird thing too, where we're getting more into making movies. We're trying to.
Well,
so
there is some
like,
level
are you a critic.
Yeah, because there's some level too where I've thought about, if we were to get knee deep into being like filmmakers, where we got to make bigger projects and went down that road and made more and more things. Like, there's other people that started out like we did.
Yeah.
So, like, Dan Trachtenberg that directed 10 Cloverfield Lane and is doing that new Uncharted movie, he was on a show called The Totally Rad Show where they did reviews and stuff. And then once he actually got, like, representation by an agent and stuff to start directing stuff, then he stopped doing the reviews because he was like, I'm not sure how good of a look it is for someone to be directing. Because, you know, too, at this point, if somebody goes back and listens to all of our old podcasts, like, I don't think that Eli Roth production companies would ever offer at least me a gig. You know,
they're not coming to you.
He's locked into a lot of stuff, but it's never sitting there just making bad statements and being like an internet flame war type person. It's saying, well, here's what I thought about this. Here's why.
Which I think is fair.
I think it's fair because if people, like, you know, have written reviews of our stuff, it's like, that's fair. I mean, I'm not going to argue with somebody on their opinion.
Yeah.
It's just we try not to be flame war fanboy type people because there's a lot of videos. Like, we've done the top 5s, and then we did do some of the videos that were like trailer or best trailers for the worst movies. But we stopped doing those years ago because
and those were for movies that, you know, basically don't have any sort of distribution nowadays. That, you know what I mean?
Smaller movies.
Kind of like, yeah, very, very. And that was Corey. You know, that was his voice.
Because I think that because we still get comments on some of those. Because I think that was not him saying these are terrible, the worst movies ever made. It's just the trailers for these present a movie where you're going to go through all this trouble and effort to find it and watch it. And then when you do, you'll be disappointed.
Yeah.
But the way that people on the internet go, because that's, I think, one of the ones that caused that person that freaked out and, like, commented all kinds of negative stuff and
they were mad at Corey's opinion for
some movie
or something.
Yeah, but, you know, like, in 2, like, we've leveled off of doing so much stuff to the site, but a lot of our videos now, they get traction where the X-Files videos, or not X-Files, well, those still get traction. Yeah. The kind of video reviews. Then the Twin Peaks discussions we did, those had the most watch time of any of our videos. Because those were the longer discussions that people actually watched. Just because that show was such an event, and I think that the audience for that skewed a little bit differently than for some newer shows. So people did want to sit there.
And there was a lot to talk about with every single episode.
And that was a show that wasn't for everybody. So I think a lot of people who watched that show may have not had other people in their life they watched it with to sit there and discuss. So finding different podcasts or videos or people did discuss it was nice because I myself do that on some stuff because there's things that I'm into that other people aren't. So I can go and just, you know, like, because Breaking Bad, there's podcasts about that I was listening to as it was coming out because other people I knew didn't talk about it as much then. I mean, everybody has now because it was on Netflix, but, like, when it was airing, people weren't talking about it as much. So I think having that type of stuff as an outlet is really nice. And those, since it was just doing a video and putting on YouTube, that was a little bit less work than doing the podcast and also doing the audio version and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then the filmmaking, like, you know, so Chad, you have that short They Knock that, you know, is being wrapped up now. That'll be coming out soon. And then beyond that,
that should be out hopefully the 1st of next month, February sometime. We're almost done. It's just right now we're in the tweaking phase. We're just trying to get everything. We're just trying to get all the audio stuff and all the effects down.
Yeah, it's not a long short.
It's one of those.
But
originally I was wanting to shoot it last year, February. And just because of my schedule and stuff, just wasn't able to do it. But I wanted to take my time on this. This is really about this short film is inspired about the black-eyed children, urban legend about the black-eyed kids. So if you're not familiar with that, you can go on YouTube and there's all kinds of stuff on it. But this is essentially what the film is based on. And it sort of has like a twist at the end. So I wanted to take something, because there are other films out there short films that are about black-eyed kids. But it's just very cliche stuff, you know, at the end they get murdered or they turn into a black-eyed kid. So this one I wanted to take as much from the actual urban legend and put it into the film. And at the end, I wanted to put my own perspective on what I think happens, you know, when you let them in. So that should be out hopefully very soon. And we'll get that out on YouTube and everything.
And then after that comes out, if there's any big movies made that have those types of characters in it that use a similar concept for the end, we can sue them. Because that's the thing with creepypasta. The reason people, you know, like these kind of internet-based legends, the reason you don't see more movies about those types of things, some So the basic concept of Slender Man, the reason it took them so long to get that out is, the character itself was kind of from the ether. So if you got permission from the person that came up with it, then you're good to go. Or if it's just like an urban legend thing, like a werewolf, you don't need anybody's permission. But once you have a lot of specific story points that people have written in different, in a YouTube series, in a post, stuff that becomes like part of the background of the character over time, you then, if you're going to use those elements in your story, you need to track down and get the rights from every person that added to it if you're going to use those elements, because otherwise you leave yourself open to be sued. So that's why I feature films about these different types of creatures and lore and creepypasta things aren't as frequent as you would think, because they got the best case scenario is you have a story that from start to end was created by one person, and you can go to one person and get the rights for it, or it's kind of something like Bloody Mary, where there's really nobody that you could have to worry about. But if you have something where one person created it and 1,000 other people added elements to the lore, that's a nightmare trying to secure that down where you can make it without getting sued, or having to creatively back yourself into a corner and change so much about what it is, it doesn't even really match up with what it's supposed to be about.
Not super related, but do you guys watch the new Salad Fingers video?
I saw that it's coming, or is it out yet?
I don't know. I
saw that there's a new one coming.
I haven't watched it, but did you ever watch Salad Fingers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Rusty Spoon.
yeah. Salad Fingers is pretty good. And Chad also did Plucked last year. Yeah. So he moved back here from Colorado. When did you move back?
I moved back to 2016.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, because you were here.
You went to Atlanta with us for the 48.
Yes, I was in Colorado, but I flew into Atlanta.
Yeah, because you were back when we did the reshoots for Hazard.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
So the back end of Hazard, when you were doing reshoots, yeah, I was on there. I was out there with you guys, helping out.
Yeah, so we did.
Shoot.
So after Atlanta, we came back and did Hazard, basically, right?
Yeah,
which was like kind of an all summer thing. That was like your big thing. That was like 10 minutes long. The biggest production I think we've done, like produced like by ourselves.
I think for us, kind of a good film school, just learning.
It was really fun too. That was a really fun summer shooting that.
Learning what not to do, what to do, what you organizationally need, what you need to prepare, what you need to prepare for.
Continuity
is very important because
there's one scene that you couldn't even use, right?
Yeah, because there was a scene that was a really cool scene that was a motorized slider shot coming in a doorway, but we weren't paying attention, and there was stuff that was out of place in the rest of the room. And it's like, I don't know that anyone will notice, but there's so much stuff that stands out that somebody definitely will.
Yeah.
Because you be very.
You didn't need the shot.
It wasn't. It wasn't necessary to it. I mean, and two, that just taught me at least a lot of things about setting realistic expectations for what you can pull off in a period of time.
Yeah.
Just a lot of interesting stuff. So if you're on the fence making a short film, just go make one, because I think a lot of times you learn just more from that. I mean, go in prepared and know how to do it. I mean, there's plenty of YouTube videos that go through all the basics of using the gear and the technology, and you can watch behind the scenes on movies and listen to directors talk and get an idea of what you need to do. But I think just going out and doing it teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
Well, also there's a lot of, like locally, there's a lot of, organizations like indie film. You have the local film festivals. Mm-hmm. You have organizations like the Louisville Film Society here. So there's, depending on where you live, there might actually be a group or organization out there that you can join up and get to know and meet with other filmmakers in your city or your area, and really, communicate back and forth and trying to, maybe you can help them on their project and they can help you on your project. And sort of build that networking, I think, is the most important thing.
Because like for us, doing that 48-hour film fest, that's really where we built a lot of the connections that got into us knowing other people. Because like up until a few days before the actual project was set to start, the only people we knew for a fact we had to use in the cast we needed were Derek and I.
Yeah.
And then the other people got locked into place, like Shelby and Nigel and Tim. Who were all in the short. So, but before then, we didn't know who was going to be in it.
Yeah.
But then we're like, okay, thank God if I have
some actual actors.
If I'm going to be in this, it's only in a very small capacity. I'm just like a little role that I got forced to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, and then just making those connections then helped us when we did the next project. I think too, winning the 48 helped people like, oh, they're not terrible, and it was a fun short to watch because people still that I don't even know so, oh, that was fun, I liked it.
At Derek's wedding, your dad was talking to me about it still, about how he should, because he has it in his garage, and part of the scene was shot in there. So he was like, people always ask me, what is that again? So he was like, he's very proud of all the stuff we've done. He was talking about. Was he talking about Ride, I think?
Yeah.
I think he was talking to me about Ride. That was another one he said. And, of course, he loves Hazard, too.
Yeah, because Roddy came and helped me set up all the pipes for hanging the lights and stuff.
Yeah.
We use PVC pipes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think shooting, as far as my favorite stuff, I love the videos we did at first with Corey.
Yeah.
Until he
dropped out. It was fun doing all that stuff.
Yeah, that was very fun. And I did not want to write the content, so it was fun just to be like, okay, I'm just going to shoot it and edit it, and that was it. And it took half the brain power as of whenever you actually had to
from start to finish,
do a round trip, do it all, which was still fun, but it's just draining. But definitely, the 48 was awesome. Shooting Hazard was really fun, and then the Atlanta trip was one of my favorite things.
We went to
I wish we could do that
Filmapalooza
again. We all went with Arnie and then my wife Nicole. Right, that was it. Yeah, so that was super fun, I think. And that was great. We met some people there too. Not a ton, but there's people there that I met that on Instagram. Somebody from Japan, that one actress from Japan.
Yeah.
She followed me on Instagram. I see her stuff all the time. They were in a great short.
Because Filmapalooza, so the 48-hour film festival is a thing that has a central organization, and there's different competitions in every city. And the winners from each city get to go to Filmapalooza, which is a bigger fest that shows all those films. And then they have overall awards categories they give at the end amongst every film that was submitted.
And they have panels and stuff too.
Yeah, and some of those were there was the distribution and the pitch one was really interesting.
And one on Hitchcock, Nicole and I went to.
Yeah, because the pitch one was
financing your film.
Yeah,
financing, pitching. Because the pitching one was one I took a lot away from because they basically said here's all the things you don't want to do. If you are in a pitch and you're if you're an indie filmmaker or whatever, and you have to go in and you have to use the words like and but a lot, and you have to go multiple sentences deep to explain the concept for your project, you've already lost them. You need to go in a concise one sentence, pitch them on your idea. And, if you can't do that...
Aliens versus Predator, but Resident Evil.
Yeah. So, if It Follows, or anybody, there's somebody that has this... Let's just, it's not an STD, but anybody that has sex with is cursed by a ghost or a creature that comes and kills them, and they have to have sex with someone else to pass it on. That's a pretty easy to grasp concept.
It's like The Ring with your genitalia.
Yeah. It's like The Ring, but instead the ring is a vagina or a orifice. They didn't really get too into the specifics. What form of sex passes that on? But there's stuff like that was valuable because those are the types of things you typically have to pay to go listen to. We did pay to go to the event, but it was included in their panels.
Yeah. And it was just fun. It
was in Atlanta. We got to go to that one production studio and see all their stuff.
About that. Yeah.
Was it Peach Studios?
Yeah, and then on the bus ride back, there was a bunch of French people singing songs in
That's
French.
because they pretty much took all the awards.
And and just going crazy, and that was a very fun bus
ride. And we
also
we did a little trolling too with Aaron. Remember that?
We pretended that he had won awards being a prop master or something.
Prop master award.
Yeah, and his mom
cried.
Because she thought it was real.
Sent her pictures or posted on Facebook one or something. Yeah. Which Arnie has now since deleted his Facebook.
Oh, no.
So that was a highlight of mine. Like I said, Hazard. And then Volumes of Blood, too. That was a great thing. They contacted me. It was like, hey, do you want to direct a segment? I guess because I had talked to them doing the review.
Yeah.
I didn't give them a good review hoping maybe I can work with them. No, it was never that.
They just reviewed it honestly.
They hadn't announced a sequel. I didn't even think they would ever do a sequel. It was just me reviewing the film, and they had saw A Brush with Death that we had done. And then my own personal videos too. That's So Raimi one about the Sam Raimi stuff.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that video just because that's something I would actually watch also. And the soundtrack swaps.
Yeah.
Those are pretty fun as well.
Yeah, because some of those videos did get shared by Bloody Disgusting or other different culture horror sites.
I wish Corey would have kept up with it. He just kind of fell out of love doing it, I think.
Because once it stops being fun or things like that, then you're just going to put out a subpar product. So it's better just to bow out.
He had a lot of things come up with work-related stuff and other things. So I could see, you have to put a lot of time and effort into it.
And it was a grind for us too. And that's why we're like, okay, well, let's put our energy towards, let's at least do the podcast, and we basically can spout our BS every week
Yeah.
as far as like, hey, what we're doing,
Yeah.
if we need it, you know what I mean? And then kind of just a reason to still get together and make sure we do the site.
And
Unfortunately, we can't do the site full time. Otherwise, yeah, I could not work at all. And
Yeah.
I would put out video reviews every week and, write articles and stuff. But,
and two, like some of it, it's risky with like copyright stuff. You don't know what's going to get flagged or what's
Yeah.
not, or how they're going to handle it. We even had one video that got flagged and taken down that didn't have a single bit of copyrighted content from a movie in it. It was a panel where,
yeah.
without getting into specifics of all that, it's all speculation based on what I think happened. But I think that somebody who was in the panel wasn't too happy with the representation of them and had somebody that they were, I don't know if they were repped by or just knew, reach out to us, send an email and said, hey, I'm reaching out to you directly to see if you'll take this video down before I submit a copyright strike. And then before I even had time to respond, went ahead and did it anyway. But it was something that, like, where we went to a con, we were given permission by the people that ran it and press passes to go and film whatever we wanted. And the people running the panel told us that we could do it and let us even hook into their audio equipment. Yeah. People involved in the panel came up to us afterwards and asked when we were going to release it, and then shared it when we did.
Yeah,
because 2 or 3 of them did.
They shared it.
Yeah, 2 or 3 of them did.
Yeah.
But I guess the lesson we learned with that was if it's a panel like that where you pay to get in, I guess we should have release forms everyone signs if we ever do that again.
I don't know.
Or if it's long as nobody comes across thinking they look bad, they don't really care.
Yeah, that's the big issue there.
Because I seriously doubt that those panels, like at these other cons where the people affiliated with the con get to film it, I seriously doubt they get written release forms from everyone.
No, I don't think they do.
So that a lot of that stuff's just made it where you have to be kind of cautious about you put time and effort in. Because if you get 3 copyright strikes, your YouTube channel's gone. And right now we have that one that's going to go away at some point, but. Yeah, so that
was it 6 months?
I think after 3 months. After 3 months, if you don't have anything else comes up, it'll go away. So it'll roll off pretty soon because it happened back in October, November. And it sucked because I didn't even have a chance to go in and actually do anything with it to stop that. But so the things to be aware of if you're running YouTube channels, and we've even had music where I made music in GarageBand get flagged because somebody else has a song they put on the copyright match system that has a GarageBand loop in it that some other band created. So the fact that I had that one single loop in mine in a completely different composition caused it to get flagged. I have to go back and forth and dispute it. And at a certain point, if you dispute it a certain number of times and they say no, then you have to take legal action if you keep on. And we are not paying a lawyer. Because here's the thing, even if you're in the right with fair use and all this stuff, if you're using clips for review, you still have to go to court, and it's going to cost you way more to even attempt to prove that because they're going to have the legal team of, some massive media company. So
I think that's why we kind of diverted to more doing original content or stuff that we create. If we incorporate music into it, we reach out to the artist and get permission and make sure, like with Plucked, we had some music in there from, I believe it was Robert Christopher. Was it Christopher Roberts?
Christopher Robert is Winnie the Pooh's friend.
Anyways, so we got permission to use his music, and then he made sure that it wouldn't get flagged in the copyright system.
Christopher Robin is Winnie the Pooh's friend, not Robert.
No, it's Roberts.
I know. I misspoke. Yeah, I mean it's fun doing those review stuff, but it's just it's the nature of it of them. But I mean, there's a lot of great videos out there that do use it, and they know how to dance around it and stuff, and we could learn to dance around it. But
yeah, I mean, part of it too is I guess you create like a sub channel or a separate channel, and you upload everything to that first to see how things get caught or flagged, and then if you can upload it to your main channel. But even then, they do manual reviews at times, and we'll catch stuff eventually. So there's a lot of risk involved to doing that because there's been a lot of YouTubers, especially like streamers and stuff, where if their channel gets shut down, it's a huge loss of because that is their job, as opposed to we're not making income from that.
They have like music in the background.
Yeah, so there's all these copyright things you don't even think about that make it difficult to do all that. So while we may at some point, because I've thought before of different concepts for videos to do. I'm like, well, I need to check and see what's getting pulled, because a lot of times with older movies, like the original Halloween, one studio owns the movie and then the music is sub-licensed to 4 people. Because when you look on YouTube and it shows who claimed the copyright stuff on things, there's like 6 people for one of those Halloween
copyright
songs.
laws are just screwed up. You know, they're horrible and they're terrible. And yeah, people need to be able to own their property, but it's just, you know what I mean? It's just such a convoluted mess.
Well, the biggest issue is YouTube. They don't mediate between any claims or any strikes or anything. It's just
they have the copyright ID system that if you're a media company, you submit your content to, and anything that gets flagged with it, you control what happens. And then the end user is just at the mercy of that.
Yeah.
Unless they're one of the biggest, YouTubers on the platform, then YouTube might give you better chances.
In order for them to actually review it, have a person review it, I think it has to be so many 1,000 views within a week or something.
Well, I think if you submit a video and they decline letting you monetize it, you can dispute that, but you have to have gotten 7,000 views in a week or something like that for them to have a person actually go through and look at it. Copyright stuff, I think that's why the YouTube networks were so big a few years ago, because those networks, people would join them, and then the networks were larger collective groups of people that took some percentage of money for the views that all their subchannels got, and they gave assistance in dealing with copyright stuff. But I think the networks are all kind of dead at this point. Nobody does that anymore. So, but yeah, so that's why we try to do more short films. And 2, doing short films and getting into filmmaking is something that, all of us had wanted to do prior to doing the website.
Yeah.
And it's just being able to do that more and more. And, a lot of it, too, is just experimental, figuring out, a lot of your short films are figuring out ways not to fail. Because a lot of people just jump into the very first thing, make a feature, and you can do that and have some success. Some people have, but at the same time, I think logistically, because a lot of people aren't very good at the business side of things or management or anything like that. And you can just really tell that when projects fall apart and don't get finished and people just don't have it planned out well at all. As opposed to I came in from a project management background and working with budgeting and all that stuff. So I had a little bit more acumen with all that to make sure we've never started a project that didn't get completed and released.
Yeah.
And most people have at least
I think that's the biggest thing.
3 failed things. I mean,
is making sure, like, if people want to work with you, if they say, hey, these guys, when they have a project, they release it every time. It might be delayed a little bit for whatever reason, but they're going to release it and it's going to get out there. It's going to get finished.
Yeah, I mean, because there's the only things we've ever even worked on that didn't get finished were other people's projects that we were just helping on. So
yeah. I helped shoot on a project that's still not out, and I shot on that.
Oh, the action movie.
Yeah, after
that was
this summer after we did A Brush with Death. So
yeah, so 2016.
Yeah. And they were towards the end of the shoot then. Yeah, people are still asking where that film's at, which they say it's getting close. I don't know. But yeah, independent. I mean, but that's not even out of the ordinary. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of...
scene.
So what happens a lot of independent films is they don't plan things properly and they get to the end and they have a movie that's an incoherent mess, story-wise and continuity-wise.
Yeah.
And they can't get anybody to come back to reshoot the same stuff for the 6th time. So then they just keep saying that it's done and it's coming soon, and they just never release it and hope people forget. I've seen that happen with a number of projects. So our plan and goal is to never, ever do that.
We will put out crap. We don't
We
care.
will release it unfinished. But yeah, so I guess we can move into discussing the movie House by the Cemetery, because that, that movie was one that Sean recommended for this episode because that's kind of the namesake of the site, is influenced by that.
And fittingly, have you guys ever seen this film before?
I had not seen more than just a few seconds.
No, this is the first time I watched it.
Fittingly, this is exactly you basically started the site with Corey, but it's like he came up with a name, this, and then, he was gone. So it's our whole site was built on somebody who's no longer here.
Yeah.
Well,
as far as the tone and everything, which we've vastly changed it over the years. And we're just now getting around to watch the film that our site is named after.
Well, and 2, it's funny because like some of those old reviews, I think it was Spookies or Phantasm or something. Somebody in the comments like, this type of video is everything that's wrong with YouTube and destroying horror culture. Like somebody commented that in recent. I was like, well, we haven't made any videos like this in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And 2, like, what about this is ruining horror movie culture? Did you just want like some dude in a dimly lit bedroom like I was genuinely curious, and they just wanted to argue. So, but yeah. So House by the Cemetery was a 1981 movie that was from Lucio Fulci, which is the second Fulci movie we've done, because previously we did Zombie 2, and this one is where
this is like the third in the, I don't know what series it is, but there was the Beyond, City of the Living Dead, and then this. This is the third one of, I can't remember the name of the series.
Yeah, but
we're big experts here at House by the Video Store.
So our motto is no research, no notes.
Hey, I did bring a butter knife.
Yeah,
just in case we had to pry open the door.
Yep. And then it gets broke off in the door. So the basic plot synopsis for House by the Cemetery: a New England home is terrorized by a series of murders, unbeknownst to the guest that a gruesome secret is hiding in the basement. So I guess we can kind of have full spoilers throughout this movie, because a lot of these Italian films, of course it's an Italian film, it's dubbed. Like
I didn't notice.
Yeah, the little kids' voices are always the most noticeable, especially too, because a lot of times those are adults doing the dubs.
Yeah.
Which is why you'll have a kid that looks like they're 6, and they're like, "Todd, would you like to go with me to get some porridge?"
This was the most egregious example I've seen of that. Really, is the kid Bob.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, I mean, it was like a Mystery Science Theater.
Well, does anybody really start out as a child named Bob? I thought typically you were
That's
Robert.
where Bob's come from,
and then you make the decision to be Bob or Bobby or whatever when you're in middle school.
You're like a Bobby when you're
Well, they
little.
probably just went through and said, "What's the most popular
American?"
I know American
probably.
name. What is
Bob.
it? It's Bob. Is this kid's name is Zabob?
Yeah. So the synopsis is. Did you already say the synopsis?
Yeah, they go into a New England home, and there's something in the basement.
So this is not my favorite Fulci film. I haven't seen all of his films. This is not the best one I've seen.
This has a lot of the staples. It has the all black with the eyes blinking type shot, which is in a lot of Italian films, mostly giallos, where they have like the eyes in the darkness.
Yeah.
So it's got that. When you think about it, it's like, well, what were those eyes? That doesn't make any sense. But it's one of those movies where it makes a certain amount of sense, and then part of it's just kind of like, we don't even care about story.
Yeah. It was a hard movie for me to get through. I was falling asleep in the middle of the day watching this movie.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah, man, we are like, I feel bad trashing it. It's our site's namesake, but like I said, this is predicated on one of the co-founders.
There was a lot of zooming in on the eyes. You get to see a lot of eye action.
It felt like a Fulci film, but it also was. There was less pizzazz, I think, than some of his. It was pretty slow. Like this film, I think, is very slow. It definitely tries to do that. It definitely tries to build a mystery. And it starts. I don't know. It starts kind of interestingly enough. Just being set around an old house, like you almost felt like it was going to start bringing in just a lot of like spooky house tropes.
It reminded me of like when he saw the picture of the little girl in the house.
Yeah.
Speaking to him, that right away reminded me of The Shining.
Yeah, which was cool. The film starts out pretty good, but the issue too with the dubbed voices, especially with Bob, that sounds like a woman or a man doing like, "Daddy, would you like to go get some?" Yes. So the thing about that, like normally for a lot of the Italian films, I can look past it, and they succeed on other merits.
Yeah.
Oftentimes,
Style.
I think with this, if you are trying to be at all spooky, which this film is trying to be spooky, it's trying to build up through atmosphere and tone. And that's why I think maybe it seems a little boring. It seemed a little boring at times to me because all that atmosphere and tone gets stripped totally away whenever Bob opens his mouth or anybody else. Like, this is the first kid in the film I wanted to see die. I was like, I hope this kid dies right away to get him out of this film. And I think that's what like just killed this film for me. That like, even though it sets up some pretty good little mysteries and some interesting things when it starts, I can never get engaged with it because of the dubbing. And normally I'm okay with that. Normally I'm totally fine, but it just hurt it so bad. And Bob is like my least favorite kid in any Italian film that I can think of.
Well, and two, like I do think that those movies, a lot of it is the era and time at which you saw them in terms of what the impact for you would be. Because I do see how if you saw this movie when you were frankly like too young to be seeing these types of movies, if you watch it when you're 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 or whatever, I could see this being a lot more effective.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
But because it does have like some gore in it, but it doesn't have any standout moments like Zombie with like a splinter to the eye or a shark versus a zombie or anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any of the kind of big set piece moments that I can think of like that.
I mean, there's some stuff, some visual flair stuff I love about it. I like the mannequin kind of in the opening, in the first half of the movie.
Yeah,
where it shows
yeah.
a mannequin and then it's,
Well,
a headless corpse and the kid sees it almost like Danny from the show.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's-
He
Yeah.
has premonition or something.
Premonitions,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I like that a lot. Like it sets some things up that I like. Again, some of some of the
Well, just the way the characters
mood gets stripped out because of
yeah,
him,
the way the
but-
characters are designed, some of the stuff doesn't make sense. Like, as an example, when she goes in, the mother goes in. I can't remember the character name.
Oh,
And when she
Doesn't
goes in,
matter.
she walks in. I guess the babysitter Anne
Yeah.
stayed with them in this mansion. But anyways, after one of the characters gets killed, and she's on the ground cleaning up this massive pool of blood.
Yeah.
And she walks in. She's like, "Hey, what you doing?"
Yeah, and then she said, "I make coffee," and then she says, "Okay, yeah."
She don't question the blood or nothing. It's just like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
we'll just go back in the kitchen and."
So we can kind of run through quickly. So they go to move to this house because they were supposed to live somewhere else, right? And it wasn't available. Is it a doc? What is he? What is his occupation? The father?
wasn't he like researching old houses or
Yeah,
something?
I had some sort of, I don't know. Anyway, so the family goes to move into this old house, and there was two people that had passed away there.
Well, because the movie has the kind of cold open at the beginning, of
Yeah.
a woman who's killed and gets a knife through the back of the head that comes out her mouth. And it is funny watching like movies of this era because the effects work in these types of movies is typically what you get out of the low budget independent film world now. Because prosthetics and all that stuff were not in 1981 or 79 or 80, whenever they shot it. That back then, what was available back then does not match up to what's available now in terms of prosthetics or anything. So it is funny watching those movies. You're like, oh, that's the type of effect that we, not we, but like low budget filmmakers use now. But yeah, like the dismemberments and the deaths in it aren't anything that was super memorable. Like there really wasn't anything I could sit there and think of right now that sticks out to me as a huge thing that I remember.
Well, I mean, the whole story, the whole thing about the house and everything, it surrounds I believe it's a professor, right?
Yeah.
And-
I found one other synopsis that might. So Norman, which I guess the father, takes over the work of a dead colleague, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson killed himself while he was busy on a research about a certain Dr. Freudstein. So that was the house that Dr. Peterson died in?
yeah, Freudstein.
Yes. Yeah, and then Norman moves into the Freudstein house with its wife, with his wife and son. But something is not right. Creepy mansion, blah blah. So yeah, there was some weird doctor that they were trying to, I guess, figure out.
That lived in this house, and then there was bodies possibly buried in the basement or something because in that era and that climate and temperament, it might have been the ground might have been too hard. Back before we had current technology to bury a hole dig enough to bury a body, so they would
In the winter with frozen ground.
in the winter with frozen ground, so they would just
we don't have the technology to bury a body.
yeah, they didn't have the
Yes.
they didn't have the
Yeah.
digging equipment,
Yes.
so they would just instead put the casket and stuff in the house. And when they move in, like the cellar is locked and they can't get in it, and all these things. So I think this is the type of movie. This may sound like blasphemy to people, but it's the type of movie that I think was ripe for a remake and
Yeah.
take the bones of
I
the
was thinking
story,
that
which
too.
could be very useful, and then kind of modernize the concept, even make it a period piece, and just amp up a lot of the elements of it to make it scary and mysterious and all that stuff. So I think this is a movie that is ripe for a remake if anybody ever wanted to do so. I mean, the story itself has a lot of kind of tropes that are from a lot of other things, but just the concept is pretty cool.
Well, they also think H.P. Lovecraft in the end too.
Yeah.
Which I think that maybe some of his other films in the series maybe more relate to some of that. I don't know, but so here's the spoiler for it. Basically, Freudstein it's kind of like a Frankenstein story essentially, but the doctor essentially
Is the monster.
Is the monster killing people and using them to, I guess, keep his cells
Has to
regenerated.
absorb their
Reanimate the
cells.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. That's a pretty cool idea. It's a little bit different. It is a Frankenstein story, but it's also a bit of a zombie story. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I like that he's in the basement, but also, yeah, some of it is just so incoherent and and it just zaps any sort of.
Well, I mean,
suspense.
it's like, Bob. Okay, if you're Bob's age, he already went down the basement once and got the crap scared out of him. But he turns around and goes back into the basement. It's like, why would you go back into the basement? And you've already been down there.
Well, I think it's because he was in the basement and then saw the head get knocked down the stairs, and then when he tried to escape, it was locked and he couldn't get out. But then if his mom, or no, he got out that time. If his mom convinced him that he didn't actually see her get beheaded and that it was just his mind playing tricks on him, as you would. I
Still,
think,
as a kid, I still wouldn't go back down there.
yeah, I mean, I
Scared to
don't.
death.
Yeah, like as a kid, I had enough belief in myself that I've been like, no, I saw what I saw, and I wouldn't go back down there. But yes, I guess the leap of logic is that since his mom so vehemently denies that what he saw happened, he's like, well, I'm a kid, and that's my parent, so maybe I should go investigate further. Then he gets locked down there, and all hell breaks loose. But I'm trying to remember, did the house have a phone in it? Because there's really no reason that Norman couldn't have just called the house instead of having to wait to drive
I'm
back.
not for sure.
I don't remember seeing one.
But the element I did like was the telepathic link between him and the other little girl.
Yeah.
I liked all that, even though it's just like a weird thing. Like, okay, well, what does that have to do with anything? Like, it doesn't really explain itself.
Well,
but
was she an actual? Was she a ghost or?
I
Was
didn't think. I guess maybe she was.
Because we didn't really get a background
I didn't
story.
think
for
she
her.
was.
I thought that her and then the old woman at the end were ghosts.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because the old woman was she the Mrs. Freudstein?
The Freudstein family.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that's right. So like I said, full
Again,
spoilers.
I was halfway falling asleep.
I'll
I'll normally go back and rewatch, but I thought, they can do any
the
heavy lifting on
creature
this.
Freudstein killed the main Lucy and Norman. So Bob's parents are killed in the basement. And when he finally is trying to get out through the tombstone that's in the bottom of the floor and to move the bricks out, the little girl somehow lifts him up.
That's right.
And then her and I guess the grandmother or the mother or whatever, she takes both of them with her back into the house. I guess he'll be there with the ghost.
Or he died and he's a ghost.
But then it's also, like I said, when he's in the basement, he sees the blinking eyes. And it's really not clear what they were because there was more than one set. And there's the one monster, the Freudstein monster, that didn't really have eyes. So I think it's just using some of those tropes that were from the Italian films in that era.
A lot of those films, too, also do the thing where somebody, some spooky stuff's happening or they're trying to cover something. And it's a lot of them. I think this is even uses the same library from The Beyond. I think I read that, when they're trying to figure out what's going on. Like, that's always a thing where, like, there's something spooky and then the main character is trying to figure it out for a while until it basically just comes to a head and they get killed or they overcome evil.
Well, and two, the score for it is very much in that mold of the Fulci movie scores because they have these scores that I enjoy. I mean, a lot of them I think are awesome and I would listen to them on their own, but doesn't really fit the mood being scary at all. Because even Suspiria, which I love, and I love the soundtrack for that movie a lot, that song is used so often. I don't think anybody really watches that movie today and gets scared by the music leading into what's going to happen. Because today
it's still effective for me. If I got it cranked up, I should normally watch that movie with it cranked way up. But
yeah, no,
I totally get what you're saying. I don't know if sometimes it's counterintuitive to what the images you're seeing on screen in some of these films.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love, especially Dawn of the Dead, I'm forgetting what's the
Italian cut.
Yeah, the
With Goblin.
the Goblin score and all that stuff. So I love a lot of that stuff, and sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. It's just like the movie House by the Cemetery had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, for the era it came out, it probably worked for a lot of people. And a lot of the things that we were seeing as issues since the movie was fresher, because 1981 slashers have been out a little bit, but they weren't in full. Well, I guess they were in full force at that point because there's a bunch of them coming out, but it wasn't as oversaturated as the market is today. And the supernatural market is really saturated and flooded with people moving into a house and they find something in the walls, the basement, etc. So I think there's a lot of things.
This is like a more inspired concept, I think. Like I really like I feel like the idea, execution is botched. Like I don't think Fulci, the movies I've seen, he is not the best storyteller.
Yeah.
It's a lot about style sometimes and just imagery and just kind of the feel of the film, which a lot of times can be entertaining enough to carry it. But he is not somebody who has like a firm grasp on storytelling and pacing on revealing information and stuff. It all feels sometimes just slightly disconnected. And I don't see that's a terrible thing, but when the other part's not holding up as well, it's...
One, two, I think there's probably people that can go back and watch this and break down the story and add all this additional meaning and metaphors and layers and complexities into it, but I don't know that it was written there.
No, yeah.
And I think that's with a lot of movies. People go back and they can find a lot of things that weren't initially written into the movie. Because like during, comparing Suspiria, the original, to the new Suspiria, people were ascribing a lot of stuff to the original that I don't think was ever subtext, text, implicit, anything. I think they're just implying stuff to it after the fact. And that does happen with a lot of movies. Like I said, like the creature work in this one wasn't anything spectacular for the Dr. Freudstein. I actually remember, like, in my head when I was watching, I was like, oh, it kind of reminded me of the creature from, what was the Tobe Hooper's Fair Circus movie?
Oh, Funhouse?
Funhouse.
Yes.
It reminded me of the monster from Funhouse to some extent, because what looked like a guy wearing kind of like a jumpsuit-ish type thing and kind of stiff in the costume with like a mask and gloves or whatever. So to me, it had a similar feel to that, but it felt less than. I mean, it's probably a lower budget than Funhouse.
Yeah, you only really see him like towards the end anyway.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really get a lot of camera time.
There's another film, I don't want to spoil it, but I think it's on Netflix. I believe they're maybe remaking it. I don't know, but it's kind of somewhat similar where somebody's like in the walls and stuff, which I like. It's handled better there, but I like the idea.
Oh, the Australian one.
It's not. It's New Zealand.
Or New Zealand. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, we don't want to offend anybody on that.
No, but I didn't want to spoil too much. But yeah, like
yes, I know. I've watched it.
Yeah, I really like the way that it's handled in that, because it's you expect one thing and it's another thing. I think this. Yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, well, this basement's been locked the whole movie. They unlock it and they figure out what's going on. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because actually, the one who unlocked the basement to begin with was Anne. So I guess, and she was the one that they sent there. So I guess she was kind of in on it.
And also, too, they allude to the fact that also the father knows what's going on too a little bit, because when he's going to open it up, Anne comes in, and then the wife is there in between them, and the father, the dad, and the Anne or whatever, they kind of share a glance. Do you remember that? They kind of look at each other like, hey, and they're trying not to get caught looking at each other, and it's like, okay, are they just like making love, or are they in some conspiracy? And it never seems like he's in on the conspiracy, which is a weird.
And
thing.
two, if like Anne was the one that kind of unlocked the door for it to get out, like why did it kill her? I mean, I guess it's just that she was in on the kind of secret and knew that she had to go in and kind of manage the family till it could feed on them, and then she never intended to actually come into contact with it.
Yeah,
and then did, and then it killed her. So I guess that's kind of the elements of that.
She was a sacrifice.
Yeah, she was just the kind of, accomplice who actually had to feel the consequences of what she did. And, the fight scene, I guess, the quote-unquote fight scene, it's very stilted and very easy to watch now and to not really be that excited by it, because when Bob's dad, Norman, like when he chops off the hand of the monster, I thought he was going to hit when he has the axe trying to get, because Bob is locked in the basement and they can't get the door open. And then the creature has Bob's head pushed against the door, and Norman goes and gets an axe, and he's hitting the axe, and it's going right next to the kid's head. I was like, oh, is he going to get him? At one point, I was like, oh, did he beat him in the head? Did he kill him? It's like, no, he just got close.
Yeah.
So then that was kind of an effective sequence. But then, like, when he chops the monster's hand off, it kind of, is a little bit low rent look. And then when they're in the basement, he grabs the knife and stabs the Fredstein in the gut.
Yeah, I always like when maggots are in films. So I like all the juices pouring out.
And then just kind of stands there until he then rips his throat off with one hand. So kind of anticlimactic and kind of just a byproduct of their budget and the effects at the time and how much time they probably had for it. Something that really doesn't have much of an impact in today's society, today's world. After playing Resident Evil 2 and seeing like the decaying face of a zombie as you shoot it and it falls apart and there's blood everywhere, it's a little bit hard to be that impressed by kind of low rent effects from the early 80s. I mean, there's some of them that can still really work.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. There's some stuff that's still nightmare fuel now. And like The Thing, I think, has amazing special effects, but that was a bigger budgeted movie and things like that. But yeah, some of that stuff just doesn't stand up as much. I think that's just, like I said, kind of blasphemy to say, but not a lot of those Italian films have really been remade that I can think of.
No.
I mean, there probably are some that I'm not remembering, but like the Suspiria remake, I mean, it didn't make a ton of money. I think they know there's kind of a limited audience for this stuff.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. They know that, hey, if we're going to remake a film, it's because it is a huge name.
Not just they like the concept.
Yeah.
They kind of got away from doing that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's probably a lot of films ripe for that. And some people hate remakes no matter what they are. But, the right filmmaker, the right story. And also, too, when the story was maybe not well told the first time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're doing a disservice if you're kind of honoring it by like, hey, let's do this again.
Because, let's see, House of Cemetery has a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb. And I know that the Rotten Tomatoes is relatively low. Because for a lot of those movies, they are. I mean, horror movies, especially older ones, it's kind of hard to get an accurate read on them. Because a lot of reviews at the time for horror were all pretty bad. And then they had to then reevaluate their scores and were like, well, we were just hating on anything that was horror. We actually did like this. Like The Thing was a movie that had a huge swing in its average scores 30 years later.
And this film definitely has its fans too. Corey, I believe, is a fan.
Yeah, so Rotten Tomatoes has got 38%. It's got 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, but on the Google users, 92% like the movie. So I think it's one of those things where it's kind of like a self-identified, like people who are fans of the movie are the ones searching it out, so therefore they are more likely to like it.
Yes.
But the average audience has probably not heard of or seen this movie. I mean, the average audience, today's world, has probably not even seen, not that this is a zombie movie, but they probably haven't seen Dawn of the Dead, the original George Romero one, or Day of the Dead. Night of the Living Dead, they probably haven't watched from beginning to end, but have seen it bits and pieces in other movies because of the the fact you can use that movie without copyright means it's in the background or on the TV of so many things now.
Yeah. Again, I think the concept's cool in this film. It's got some awesome elements, some good moments too. But overall, just not a tightly scripted and not a film that's does well at building dread. Basically, a lot of times because of it all being ripped out of whenever Bobby opens his mouth, or Bob. But I do remember that character's name, and normally I don't remember any characters' names in any movies we cover.
Yeah, well, because like there's stuff I even watch every single episode of. I'm like, shows where you see them. It's like, what was their name?
Yeah.
I don't. But yeah, at least in this, I remember Bob.
Yeah, I will not forget Bob. Yeah. Any other thoughts for you, Chad?
No, I mean, like you said, it was hard to get through this film. I actually watched it on 1.5 times the speed just to get through it. And that was mainly because we were supposed to do this yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the direction it was going in the beginning when the film opened up. I mean, it's sort of cliche. They move into a big house and it's like, okay, what mysteries lie beyond the walls? And it's usually typically some locked door, whether it's in the attic or in the basement. But like you said, the part where Bob opens his mouth and starts talking, it's like, oh man, it's very cringy and it's hard to get through. But I mean, if you look past that, the overall concept of the story of what they're trying to tell. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's definitely capable of being rebooted.
Yeah.
You know, if you actually put some fill in some of the blanks and get rid
you
of
got to
some
do
of the
major reconstruction.
If you just take
on
the
it.
very bones of the idea of some
Yeah.
professor found a way that by absorbing or consuming the flesh or whatever of live humans, they can extend their life. There is a story there. And
Well, I mean, it's
and
just
not
like
the supernatural,
I mean, you could tie it
little
into
girls.
modern day of like injecting young blood into your body and
Yeah, stem cells.
reanimating yourself.
yeah, but like it did kind of have like a shining element of the kid,
Yeah.
like with seeing the mannequin that would look like the housekeeper that would lose her head, and he saw the little girl. So there's there is cool stuff there. Like I said, I think it's just very much a product of its time. If you saw this back in the 80s or you saw this, in more modern era as a young kid, it probably has way more of an impact than if you see it today fresh after so many things have gone so much further. So even the effects aren't shocking and the violence isn't shocking. It's actually pretty tame by today's standards. There's like a part like where the realtor comes and her foot goes through the floor and stuff like that. It's not really that violent. They stick her with like a fireplace poker. There's stuff far more violent than that on TV today, on primetime TV. I mean, so it's just, I think it's, like I said, one of those movies were very much of the era. And I think that if you just can't really get over the dubbed voices, because I would almost rather just have seen, I mean, I know all those movies at the time, those would be shot and then they would just dub over them. They don't even probably have the original audio recordings. But I would rather have it be the original audio recording with subtitles.
Yeah, I think
in
that's
almost
the
every
issue. They
single
don't have
case.
they don't have the recordings because they didn't work.
They didn't
about
do that
location
way.
sound. I think they all. I think Bob may have spoke Italian in this, and then everybody else I think actually did speak English.
Yeah.
Like Bob and maybe somebody else spoke in just Italian. Maybe they didn't know English, and then everybody else did do English, and of course they dub it anyway because what they always do. But I guess I guess their cameras are loud, and that's the way they operate, and it's maybe their pipeline. They're used to making films, but thank God that's not always the case now.
And Fritzstein being the name is kind of telegraphing what's to come. But yeah, so I guess we can give this our scores and then wrap all this up. So it's kind of hard to give a movie like this a score out of 10 because I understand the lens through which it's viewed. So why some people would give it a high score, but then you sit here today and you're like seeing it today and just rating it objectively across all movies. It's kind of hard to give it. Okay,
I'm going to give it a 5. I'm going to give it a 5
That's
because
pretty good.
Because I'm glad I watched it, but I probably will never watch it again.
Yeah.
But it's our entire site is named after it. So
Influenced.
So you got.
I have to give it something.
I was thinking of
down the
4, but
middle.
yeah. But honestly, I was thinking of 4, but really there is some stuff that I will continue to think about with this film. The whole concept. Like I do like that. That's enough right there. That's way better than a lot of schlocky horror films from that era that are just so forgettable and just seem so lazy. It doesn't seem lazy on that front. You know what I mean? It seems like, hey, we thought of a cool idea, and they even went further with it, with the supernatural element as well. And I like the way that was worked in. Maybe it was a direct influence from The Shining, coming out. What year did The Shining come out? 70.
I think it was the same. Was it 80?
Oh yeah, it was the same year. So maybe 81. Yeah. I think it was 81. So maybe not. Maybe that was a coincidence or from the book or something.
Because The Shining was 1980. I mean, the book was out before that, so.
Oh, yeah. They probably saw The Shining and then did this in 81.
Yeah, like, he's got the Shining.
Yeah, I would probably actually maybe give it a 5 only based on the concept because the concept is actually good. It's terribly handled, I think. I was floating around a 4 maybe, but...
So if you were to... Okay, so if you were to put in better actors, top-notch actors, but keep everything the same, would it still be a 5? What do you think?
It would be higher, but I think it needs a lot more work to be like a good film still. You know what I mean? Like I think the beginning's pretty good. The end of it's fine. It could be better. The end of it's fine though. But I think just the whole middle part is where the second act I think is pretty bad.
Yeah, I think that
it's just
a
bad.
lot of these movies, a lot of times the discovery element happens in the second act when they're discovering kind of what's going on. And then that knowledge informs how the third act ends. This one, it's like he finds out just as it's about to, right before everything happens, what's kind of going on or what he thinks is going on, and then it just all kind of quickly happens.
Yeah,
like
you really
boom,
don't
boom,
know,
boom.
and like what exactly. Because I know he mentions it. The husband tells the wife, say, "Hey, this is no. He needs fresh bodies to reanimate his cells." Like it was like really quick.
Yeah.
And then you're down in the basement, and then
Yeah, like I was waiting for this film to end, not because I was curious about what was going to happen, just because I wanted it to be over with. But when he actually found out what happened, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
if they would have left some bread trails or breadcrumbs, and you kind of would have even had you something to think about. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think that would have been way more satisfying. And then the finale isn't that good at all. It's kind of what you expect from films of that era.
Well, then just the ending that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, but that obviously could be much improved on as well. But the through the middle part, I was just waiting for it to be over with.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. House by the Cemetery, even though it's
Yeah,
our site's
influencer name. I mean,
but we didn't pick that based on a specific movie.
I mean, and the name itself stands on its own. And
Yeah.
you can shorten it
Yeah.
to HBTVS, which is something that we often just abbreviate it to. And
that is a venereal disease from It Follows.
Well, I mean, I
actually.
think the whole-
HBTVS.
I think just the name itself, house by. I mean, any house that's
Yeah.
near a cemetery would have that sort of like spooky or
Yeah.
horror
great
element
name.
involved into it, especially if it's an older house.
So let's go pitch to Netflix if they fund a remake of House by the Cemetery, and we just because you could make a version of that is legit scary, or at least people who be scary to people, because the beginning does open up kind of like a creepy atmosphere of like what's going on in this house, because like that type of story taking place in a house the size of the Haunting of Hill House, and you have this kind of mysterious murder element, then I think you got something there. Because it also reminded me of that one PlayStation game, Clock Tower, kind of like the opening kill.
Yeah.
So a lot of those video games, I really think, took cues from the Italian directors and stuff like that, from Argento and Fulci and different people. But yeah, I mean, on the score, I can't give it above a 5. I almost think it's like 4. I mean,
Yeah.
on its own terms, watching it today, in terms of recommending across all movies that exist, there's a small subset of people I'll be able to recommend this to. Because like my parents, they're not going to watch this.
Oh my God.
Like Julie would not enjoy this. A lot of my friends who aren't horror aficionados but will watch a good horror movie, I probably couldn't really recommend this to them. It's mostly just your hardcore horror fans and people who are really into films from the 70s and 80s, especially if they're into Italian films. But it's not like a general recommend for all audiences. It's not like a must-see like Suspiria or some of these other movies. Like if you want to see a haunted house movie from the era that I think holds up a lot better, check out The Changeling, which we did not too long ago. Different kind of story, but same general era. Doesn't have the dubbing problem.
Yeah, I prefer The Beyond more than this.
Yeah, or other Fulci movies.
Yeah.
Because like
City of the Living Dead, I don't think I've really watched. This, by the way, this is on Shudder, but it's also on YouTube as well. But the Shudder, there's like an HD version apparently. It's seemingly HD version.
go to Shudder or buy it or whatever you
Yeah.
want to see it. But yeah, so none of us are super hot on it. I can see why people would have appreciated it a lot more back when it came out, but I don't think it stands up super well on its own today.
So we had decided before we watched it too that if this film didn't get at least an 8 out of 10 from all of us, then we were going to shut down the site. So
Yep. It's done.
it's over with. It was a mistake.
And then we're going to reopen with a different name, House by the Haunted Hill. Or House by the Haunted
All right,
Video.
So yeah, video stores are defunct now. They weren't really.
Well, actually,
I mean,
I
they were
do
House
defunct,
by the
but
streetlights.
they were less defunct 5 years ago.
I mean, I do live in a house by
Yeah,
an
that's
actual video
right.
store.
Well, there
That's right. So
were
maybe we would
the
just-
indie stores were more prevalent, but most of those have gone away too. So now there's just a very small
Family
number
Video.
of chains. There's Family Video, and then there's kind of the one-off unique chains that are in different cities. But the general rental of videos
Redbox.
has Redbox, and then the streaming services and video on demand has really killed all that. On one hand, I like the convenience of just sitting on my couch, hitting a button, and I'm watching a movie. But then I also miss the experience of going and looking amongst just all the covers and. But then again, you also had the smug people that worked at them often that were rude to everyone if they didn't have their exact same taste. and or the high schooler that didn't know any movie knowledge at all and didn't care. Or there's also very knowledgeable people that made it a great experience who could recommend things.
But Wad and Wooly here in Louisville was stellar, and I love their staff picks. I've found a lot of good films because of that. And then just the way they categorize their sections, like I discovered so many films because of that. And because you're right there, you know, sometimes, if you're zipping through on TV, you might say, well, I can watch that literally anytime. I'm just not going to watch it right now. You know what I mean? Like if you're in a video store and you're like, all right, I've got to make a decision. I'm buying this. And then you have it and it makes you watch it. You know what I mean? Like for me personally, and I'm like, I need to watch this today because I got to take it back tomorrow. Or it might be like, hey, I'm going to get that film next time I come back. I'm going to, you know, and you're thinking about it. And it's a totally different experience. You know, everything gets lost when things get changed. But yeah, that was the whole also idea. You know, Corey, you know, he wanted
more nostalgia.
He wanted
to about older movies.
Yeah, he wanted to invoke the films, you know, that he would rent when he was younger at the video store
and stuff that people aren't as aware of anymore.
Yes, but also too, you know, we were highlighting a lot of. The goal was to highlight a lot of stuff that people maybe not weren't aware of, and really, there's so many people doing that now.
Well, and,
you know what I mean?
And
we're not servicing a lot of people doing that.
And the other thing that we found out just by search engine, you know, SEO type stuff, if people aren't already looking for specific things, you're not going to grow your audience super organically out of that. You kind of need to have an audience and do that.
Well, you're not going to convince them. You're not going to click on your video.
People aren't searching out reviews of movies from the 80s that are low budget horror sequels or something
that they've never seen.
So, I mean, we still cover stuff like that on the podcast, but I can tell you.
Well, I mean, it started off as a passion project.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something that
still is.
Yeah, I mean, it still is. It's not.
I mean,
making
it is, but
anybody.
it's more of, you know, when we started it, Corey and myself, we were passionate about the older, the cult underground type films. So sort of like having a platform that allowed you to rediscover a lot of these unknown films. And instead of doing written articles or just general video blogs, bring in some type of video production quality to it when doing the reviews. And that's how we started out. But now it's just kind of like, we're just more, at least for myself, I'm definitely more interested in the filmmaking.
Yeah.
And taking a story that you write and bringing it, you know, to the screen. I think it's much more rewarding when you do stuff like that. Because you're creating something original.
Yeah.
And it allows you to branch out. So, you know, like, William, you have a specific style when you write and direct stuff. Sean, you have a style. I have my own style. So it gives a lot of diversity as far as like what type of stories and what type of content we bring out. And I think between the three of us, I think we've all come to a consensus that eventually we would like to produce, you know, a full feature film.
Yeah, for sure.
In the future.
Yeah, it's definitely a goal and something we're trying to...
Yeah, I think that's... I'm not, you know, hopefully still doing Volumes of Blood 3. The crowdfunding didn't work out. They're trying to find other investors and stuff. So supposedly going to be doing the wraparound segment for that.
They're doing the road show.
I really haven't said wraparound.
Yeah, so if you want to be a sponsor...
Yeah.
Reach out to those guys.
PJ Starks.
But other than that, like, yeah, basically I'm like, from there, for me personally, it's like feature or nothing. You know, not or nothing, but it's a feature, or if we all work together on a feature and do segments or something like that. But yeah, that's where I'm kind of at, because I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to just jump in all the way.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said too, we've learned enough from all the shorts to have a kind of good idea of how to get things done on a decent time frame and what we need to do. And two, with shorts, you really need to keep them pretty, you know, as the name implies, short, for them to really have any ability to kind of reach a mass market. I mean, there's stuff all over the place. It's 10 minutes, it gets 1 million views. It just depends on what it is. But, you know, I think doing a feature would be really nice to be able to sink into something and spend time on it and not have to worry about, did I hook them in the first 15 seconds? Because I've seen people on some of the short film groups I'm in, and like, look, as a viewer, here's my rule. You got 15 seconds to hook me. And I'm not being rude. If you don't do it then, I'm turning it off. And it's like, well, I mean, that's kind of a really, if it's a 2-minute video and you're only willing to do, like, I don't work that way, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of look at something and see if I want to watch it, and then, but yeah, so doing a feature would be nice because it would get away from all those constraints and let you kind of sink in. And two, in general, people don't care about shorts. I mean, they watch them and you can get some buzz with them, but you can't sell it. You can't really make a name off of that to the same extent a feature does. Because I've seen some pretty poorly made features that get a lot of buzz for people. Story wise, structure wise, technically wise.
So let's hope we do the same.
So if we can at least be a bare minimum, then we can get some attention to it. But yeah, so
thanks for listening. If you've listened for just one episode or for 200 somehow.
Yeah, if you listen via YouTube or the podcast on a podcast app or iTunes or whatever, Stitcher, wherever else it is.
Our 5 years is coming up the end of this summer.
Yeah,
maybe we'll try to do a little crowdfunding thing to get a little bit more equipment so we can live stream these things or something.
I mean,
like
I've got that thing to live stream. I just need to set it up.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I just keep forgetting to use it.
We should have done that tonight.
Well,
we need to do that. William. We need to do that.
It takes a lot more setup than you think. So do us a huge favor if you're listening via iTunes, leave us a review. It helps people find the podcast. You can find all the work we're doing at houseofavstore.com. Find links to all of our social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all those places. But definitely make sure to follow us on YouTube and Facebook because that's where our shorts and stuff get posted. And I think the next episode we'll be doing that Jake Gyllenhaal movie, right? Velvet Buzzsaw or whatever.
Sure.
I think so. Something
Sounds
that's easy to watch.
I mean, I really want to see that movie. I forgot that it was coming out this early. I know the Sundance. I've been hearing some good stuff. A friend of mine, actually, who was there, I don't want to say friend, but Facebook friends with her, met her because I was going to work on some production with her.
Yeah.
And it never happened. But she works in LA and stuff. But she said, still thinking about that one. But other than that, everybody else I've heard seems to be pretty high on it. So,
yep. So I think we'll discuss that unless there is any late changes. But yeah, so
in case somebody drops a Cloverfield or something in the Super Bowl.
But so if you want to follow us specifically on social media, the best place to follow me is on Instagram at the William Caps.
I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter.
I'm at Bringer Spears on Twitter.
Yep, and that'll wrap up this episode of the House of VSR podcast. Thanks for listening.